This is the Growing Light Podcast with Desiree, episode 19, Next Steps After Charlie Kirk. Today we're going to be talking about how to move forward boldly, courageously, testifying of Christ following Charlie Kirk's assassination. There's what some people have called a shift, a revival, and I think many of us, many Christians, love seeing all of this faith and testimony, and we want to keep it going. So that's what we're talking about today. But September 10th in the morning, I did something I try not to do. I turned on my phone and I started scrolling, and the thing that I happened to see a couple times, and I was like, what is this? Was that the murder of Irina Tsaritska. And of course, if you've seen the video, granted the one I saw was edited, so didn't see the actual act, just the before and after. And I was horrified. I was sickened. I was sad, heartbroken, just that this could happen to somebody in our country. And so that was my morning. And then later that day, I learned about Charlie Kirk being shot, as well as another school shooting. And the reason I share that is because I feel like it is kind of a good snapshot. Well, not good's not really the right word, but maybe an accurate snapshot of what it means to be living in the last days, or as President Nelson has put it, at the bottom of the ninth. And um, and it's going to be hard, right? And bad things are going to happen. And how do we keep pressing forward with hope and faith and courage? So I truthfully didn't know much about Charlie Kirk before this happened. I do follow the news and I do listen to political commentators. However, I try to limit it, and I don't do a ton because I know the effect it has on my mental health and emotional health, and I just try to not get too try not to drown in it, you know? And so Charlie Kirk wasn't somebody I'd heard of. And I mean, sorry, I had heard of him. He wasn't somebody that I had ever listened to. I'd never actually heard him speak. And so the other part of September 10th that was, the opposite of dark but light was just how hopeful and how it just felt like an amazing discovery as I started to consume some of his content, and I heard other people that knew him closely talk about him. And I didn't know that there was somebody out there talking and engaging with people and basically defending the family proclamation. Now, he wouldn't have called it that, and I don't even know if he knows what that is, but that is in essence what it was. And I just felt so inspired and uplifted, I guess, as well as heartbroken, of course. It was still very fresh then, and so there's just a lot of sadness. And so the next few days were just processing a lot of sadness. However, I think there was also a lot of just consuming content on YouTube about Charlie Kirk. And it was, like I said, a mix, right? It was very sad, but also very beautiful and inspiring. And I think he kind of embodies what I hope for myself and for all of you, and that is to live our best life right now. Sometimes we think that we have to have the perfect circumstances, like a good economy and a kind of stable world. And we're anything but that right now. And it is I know that we were sent here for this time, and I know that we can still live our very best life regardless of what's going on in the world. And Charlie Kirk was doing that, right? He knew that he had a work here to do, and he was connecting with God, with Jesus, and saying, okay, I'll do what you want me to do. He's letting him prevail in his life. And I think those are the two main things, the two foundational things that we all need to do in order to live our best life right now, is to be able to hear God and to let him prevail in our lives. And he was doing that. And um, while none of us wanted him to be assassinated, well, most of us, anybody I'm talking to, I'm pretty sure, didn't want him to be assassinated, right? And we don't want to be assassinated. None of us want to be murdered. And yet, I think we all want to live like that, where we speak our truth out loud, where we live our lives to kind of be a testimony of the gospel. Imperfectly, of course, but still inspiring. And on top of that, there's also, inspiring, yes, but also the best possible eternal destination, right? Like, this life is fleeting. This life is temporary. This life, in the grand scheme of things, is very, very small, but it's very consequential in that the choices we make now will determine what it's like for the rest of eternity for us. So to think that we can both live our best life now and have the best eternity possible is, I think that's what all of us want, right? And sometimes we feel like we have to do things the way the world wants in order to live our best life now. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that, because it's, it's trying to live by standing on your knees. and I guess I'd rather die standing. So how do we move forward, right? How do we want to feel moving forward? Before I get to that, though, I want to direct your attention to the scripture that talks about the men's hearts failing them. Okay, so I'm going to link this video in the description below, but Andrea Woodmansey did an episode on the Stick of Joseph Dive Deeper podcast, and she was talking about what this means. And I feel like in my Sunday school classes, we often talk about it as, the mental emotional health. Like, we've had a lot, more mental health problems in our modern day than we did, 100 years ago. But I've also heard it as, people just being kind of overcome by the terrors and the tragedies of our day. And I think both of those could definitely be an interpretation. The one that she wanted to add to those is that of timidity about your beliefs, timidity or hiding or almost embarrassed to speak your truth. And I think, I don't know how it is growing up in like Utah or Arizona. I grew up in Washington State, and I didn't have a lot of, I had a handful of member friends, but most of my friends were not members of the Church of Jesus Christ. In fact, most of them didn't even go to church. So there, for me, has always been a sense of, like, I probably shouldn't say anything. They won't understand. They won't get it. They'll think I'm weird. And that is, according to this, getting to the Hebrew root meaning of men's hearts failing them, is that sort of hiding who we truly are, hiding are the things that we believe in so strongly. So that's not what I want to do, and I'm sure that's not what you want to do, but it's so easy to do it because we don't want to rock the boat, right? We don't want to draw attention to ourselves. We just want to kind of be able to sail through our lives without too much attention. So in order to kind of overcome that very natural instinct, we need to intentionally choose what we want to think so that we can decide how we want to feel in those instances in our lives when we have that opportunity to stand for truth. And I want to feel inspired. I want to feel determined. I want to feel willing and charitable. I want to feel on fire for the gospel. And I want to be able to shout it from the rooftops to let everybody know this is how you live your best life. This is how you'll be happiest. This is what you need. And it comes from choosing our thoughts, because our thoughts, what we choose to think, is going to influence how we choose to act. Because when we're thinking, I don't want to rock the boat, that's kind of a fearful thought, more of an embarrassed kind of don't look at me sort of thought. And so it goes to show that when we're thinking that thought of I don't want to rock the boat, that we hold back and we don't share the things that are on our minds and hearts. So what can we think instead? So what we can think instead and direct our minds to, and the way this works is it's just a constant redirection. I was driving down the road with my family a few days ago, and actually I wasn't driving, I was in the back seat. And so we're going down this road, and on my right side is beautiful fall colors, and on my left side is a scar on the landscape from a wildfire that we recently had. And it was fascinating for me to see how my mind was just torn between which one to look at, the beauty or the horror. And we always have that choice, right? We always have the choice to look at one versus the other. And our minds, if things are beautiful, they're not a problem. And so there's less of a pull to see that because our brain is always searching for some kind of problem. And that it feels like it's so important to be aware of that. And so the pull, the natural man says, look at the fire, look at the scars. And I'm not saying that there's not a time and place to look at the problems and resolve those and work through those. What I am saying is that we don't necessarily want to dwell on those things. We don't want that to be the focus of our lives, okay? Because what you focus on, you get more of. And so the thoughts that we can focus on really matter. So you're going to have the thoughts of, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want people to, think negatively of me. I can say it. But then we can always redirect our mind to another thought that we feel really strongly about. And so I'm going to give you two. They may not work for you. And if they don't, I encourage you to brainstorm to really try on different thoughts, just like you try on a different, shirt or hat or something, and see what works for you. So one of the thoughts that I came to that helped me feel inspired and on fire for the gospel was that millions welcomed Charlie Kirk's powerful message. That's exciting to me. I didn't know that people were so hungry for that. But it makes sense, right? When you've got all this stuff in the world and it's like, this is the truth. And you're like, but it doesn't sit right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't inspire me. It doesn't bring me hope. And so, of course they are. But sometimes when you have something that you've had all your life, it's easy to take it for granted and not realize what a gift that it is. Okay, so that's one thought. The other thought I came to was Charlie Kirk often said, for God, for family, for country. Okay, so when you're faced with the task of doing something that might require some courage, to have that thought for God, for family, for country, and if you want, you can add something to the end of it, and any martyr's name would probably work, but I felt like for me, adding for Charlie. For Charlie, because he gave his life trying to help people find truth. And that thought fills me with love, fills me with devotion, compassion, and it helps me see that the gifts, the messages, the truths that we have and hold as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are needed. And that means that we'll have to endure some people's, some naysayers, but it's worth it if it helps us find those people that are seeking, that are hungry for it. So as you're going through your day, right, and you've got the option to focus on the scarred landscape or to focus on the beautiful fall colors, I encourage you to seek out those fall colors, those things that bring beauty into your life, that inspire you for your God, for your family, for your country, for Jesus. That's God again, but for Charlie. All right, that's what I have for you this week. Until next time, take care.